Welcome to Rotherhithe, and we're here today for the Brunel Museum. And the reason we're here particularly now is because it's 200 years ago since the first tunnel started being constructed underwater. And it was here in London, between Rotherhithe and Wapping, taking you underneath. It's got a varied history. We're going to find out more about it because today we're also interviewing the Museum Director Katherine McAlpine. So you're going to hear her voice through the video as we take you around this fantastic museum which celebrates 200 years of history. So you've seen already we're at the Brunel Museum here at Rotherhithe in London, and a fantastic time to be here because 200 years celebrations, and I'm with Katherine McAlpine, who is the Managing Director for the Brunel Museum, who's going to tell us more about some of the history. We're also going to have a look round at some of the exhibits, and I've got some fantastic questions which have come in from some of our subscribers as well who want to know a bit more about the museum. So Katherine, tell us about the museum, tell us about the celebrations and 200 years.
Great. Well, thank you so much for helping us celebrate 200 years since the construction of the Thames Tunnel. So the Thames Tunnel was first of its kind, first of a tunnel under a river, under a body of water, anywhere in the world, and happened right here in southeast London, which I think is amazing. Yeah. We wouldn't be able to kind of go under the river, crisscross the river as many of us do every single day without it. We wouldn't have the Channel Tunnel, which takes us over to France. So really a kind of amazing engineering achievement. And yeah, 200 years ago, Mark Brunel and his son Isambard Kingdom Brunel, arguably a lot more famous, but not back then, sunk the tunnel shaft into the ground, and that's one of the buildings that you can visit when you come here and hopefully celebrate with us in this 200th year.
It's amazing, and considering it's here in London and you can ride the tunnel now on the trains, and I've done it a couple of times this morning, and there's times that I've been with some of our subscribers and we've gone on the tunnel and gone, actually, do you know what, this is history, and the first bit, and it's 200 years, it's absolutely incredible, and it's still there. Tell us about the early days, because I've got some great questions. I don't want to sort of dive into that. But 1825 was when they first started construction. And one thing I have noticed, you've got an amazing timeline downstairs here. And I was just gobsmacked by that. And that's going to be on the screen now so people can see it. Just give a hint. And I love the fact you set yourselves up, which bits have we missed in history on that one. But it started 1825, but first pedestrian didn't come through for quite some time. So it's a bit of a history there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, construction started 200 years ago in 1825, but actually, there's lots of kind of anniversaries we could be celebrating and probably will be celebrating. But if we go back 7 years to 1818, that was when Mark Brunel kind of patented his tunnelling shield. So that was the thing that really, that's what made this the world's first successful tunnel under a river, because people had tried and failed before. So in, I think 1810 it was, Trevithick, the sort of Cornish mining engineer, he'd had a go a bit further up the Thames.
Oh, really?
And they got really, really close, and then heartbreakingly it all collapsed and they didn't manage to make it to the other side of the river, and Mark Brunel succeeded where others had failed because of this tunnelling shield that he'd sort of patented in 1818, and this was this kind of incredible piece of engineering kind of structure that allowed 36 miners in sort of 3 rows, top, middle, bottom, and kind of 12 people across. So 36 miners sort of all digging in front of them, and then the whole structure would move forward, and then the kind of bricklayers would come in behind them. And this was another kind of innovation he brought in, was lining the tunnel with these bricks. Seems really obvious to us now, but obviously it wasn't then. It was this protective layer which then stopped that kind of soft earth collapsing in. But that makes it sound really simple and straightforward, doesn't it? But it wasn't.
No, I was going to say, you talk about the soft earth, and that's something here, and especially if you're thinking about the bed under the Thames, which with all that water on top and the influence of the water on the seabed, that must have been one heck of an engineering feat.
Yeah, it absolutely was, and it wasn't without its trials and its challenges. So, you know, we talked about the tunnel shaft being kind of sunk into the earth, and that was also, you know, that was the sort of largest example of something called the caisson method being used, and that's where they used the soft earth here at Rotherhithe to their advantage. So they built it onto the ground and then it sank down. But then, as you say, once you start digging under the river, it's very, very soft. Yeah. It could collapse in around you at any moment. And that sort of hairy moment was definitely the bit where they'd dug the tunnel and you're waiting for the bricklayers to line it, to kind of give you that layer of protection. And I can only imagine kind of how nerve-wracking that was.
Look at their watch going, when are they turning up?
Yeah, everyone down in the tunnel. And you know, and it wasn't without its problems. It flooded several times.
Yeah, I saw that on the timeline.
Water came in. One of those floods was one of the worst floods. 6 of the workers in the tunnel died. It was nearly 7. It was nearly Isambard Kingdom Brunel himself. Right. Almost perished in that flood. He was pulled to safety by Richard Beamish, who was kind of his second in command. But yeah, his kind of unconscious body effectively floated to the top and was sort of pulled to safety. So engineering in this country could have looked very different had that not happened.
It's amazing, the precursor for everything around the world going underwater. It's here. Amazing.
Yeah.
Right, what are you most proud of in this museum? Because I've had a good look around this building, which is quite incredible, and I'm looking forward to going into the next building. Because actually, do you want to describe to people the way the museum's set up?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is our office that we're in right now, which is part of the engine house or the boiler house, and this is the kind of later building. So in 1843, this was built when the tunnel opened for pedestrians, and it was to house the kind of the boiler or the pump that was kind of pumping water out of the tunnel. The other building that I've already kind of talked about a lot is that tunnel shaft, which is effectively just a great big hole in the ground. But it's what sits over the tunnel, because as you've mentioned, the tunnel is still in use today. You can go through that tunnel on the Windrush line. So when people come to the museum, we send them almost straight back out to the tunnel shaft to kind of experience the incredible kind of engineering. We now have a beautiful staircase, which if anyone's visited the museum, but maybe sort of pre-sort of 2016, they may recall scrambling down a scaffolding to get to the bottom. We don't have that anymore, luckily. So we've got this beautiful staircase, and the kind of fake sort of floor was put in over the tunnel, so you can still feel the trains under your feet. Cool. And that's, you know, we use that space for all sorts of things. We've recently done film screenings as part of our French Revolution season. We do concerts there every month. We even have weddings. So we do all sorts of things down there. But when you come to the museum, you can see an introductory video and then come back into the engine house, which is where our collection of kind of artefacts and models relating to the history of the Thames Tunnel can be found.
Incredible. I must admit, I got off the train and I stood at Rotherhithe looking back down the southbound platform, back down through the tunnel, and just seeing the lights from Wapping Station just about, and you can get an idea of the incline and what people used to walk through. But it's incredible. Really is lovely.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I think that's one of the things we try and convey to people is we really take this engineering for granted now. You know, we whiz around London on the Underground or in lots of other cities across the world, and we just sort of take it for granted. We're like, oh yeah, that's what we do. But 200 years ago, that really was remarkable. And you get on that tube, you go that one stop, and it takes maybe 30 seconds to go from one bit to the other.
The engineering it's gone through.
But the engineering, it took 18 years to build, and we can go through it in 30 seconds today, which I just think is amazing.
It's excellent, really is brilliant. Right, go on, I've got some questions. So we've got some questions. So here we go. Right, first one, Luana in the States. She asks, why here? Why was it built here? Why did he choose?
Great question. So if you ever come and visit the museum, Luana, I hope you will see that we're right on the River Thames, which makes sense because we are talking about the Thames Tunnel under the River Thames. And the reason that we are here is kind of two main reasons. One is the Thames Tunnel was designed not just because it would be a cool thing to do, but for a commercial purpose. So we are in the heart of kind of London's Docklands. 200 years ago, London's this huge port city with kind of cargoes coming in from around the world, and people needed to be able to move cargo from the docks on one side of the river to the other side. The only way that you could do that at the time...
Don't worry about it.
The only way...
This is why we love doing this sort of stuff, because it just shows it's live, it's unedited.
It's live,
we'll leave it in. It's my mother. Right. She's coming in with a question.
That's not why. And so they were moving cargo. The cargoes were stored in the docks on either side, but the only way to transport cargo was to go to London Bridge, which isn't that far distance-wise, but traffic was as bad then as it is now, and it would take ages to move things across. And the more you kind of store things on the ships themselves, you have a problem with piracy and theft. So having a sort of tunnel that would allow you to move cargo from one side to the other makes a lot of sense. Commercially it makes a lot of sense. And then also, we talked about it a bit, but the geology, kind of knowing that you can tunnel through because it is soft enough here was another reason. So lots of really good reasons.
Bit of a dichotomy, isn't it? It's soft enough to do, but actually it's quite dangerous as well.
Trying to get that sweet balance. Spot it was hard. It was a very brave thing for them to do, I think.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. And Luana, interestingly enough, when we came to the Mayflower, this is almost right next door. It literally, I can stand outside and see the Mayflower. So it's one for again, definitely. Right. So, question for you from Nancy in Australia. She asks, what exhibit are you most proud of in the museum?
Nancy, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about our current French Revolution display. I know you're in Australia, but it is on until March next year, so hopefully you can come visit us and see it at some point. And what I love about this display is it takes us back a step, and it sort of asks this really interesting question about why did a French engineer, Marc Brunel, end up building the world's first underwater tunnel here in Rotherhithe. And one of the reasons is the French Revolution. Right. So Marc Brunel was a French aristocrat at the time of kind of political turmoil and unrest at the beginning of the French Revolution. And he effectively realised that it was not a good thing for him to stay in France with his politics as they were. He left, he went to America for a bit, and then he came back to England. And the reason he came back to England is because before he left France, he'd fallen in love with an English governess that he'd met, Sophia Kingdom. Right. And that's where Isambard Kingdom Brunel gets his interesting middle name.
Middle name, yeah.
So we've got a display on at the moment where we've brought out some of, we're kind of talking about some of those themes and sort of why they're here, but it's also allowed us to talk a lot more about the kind of family, so Marc Brunel, Sophia Kingdom, their relationship, but also some of our more kind of delicate objects that we can't normally have on display. So we've got this beautiful fan
I saw that.
That was was owned by Isambard's wife. Because actually, as more and more kind of French people left because of the revolution, kind of the aristocratic kind of French, they would be selling their wares to kind of allow them to kind of make enough money. Yes. And we think that's how this ended up in sort of Mary Horsley's collection, is that it sort of belonged to a kind of wealthy French family who'd been forced to sell it as part of the revolution.
Dating back to.
We think it's sort of late 1700s, even though Mary wouldn't have had it until the sort of 1830s, 40s, kind of later than that.
Yeah, I saw that. It looks beautiful.
It's a beautiful
really
fan.
Is. Absolutely incredible. Right, so Rhonda and Matt in Canada ask, what would be the one museum item that people miss that is of great significance?
So again, the thing that I'm really excited about that I think people don't look at, which is one of the reasons why we've put this French Revolution display on, is a pair of Marc Brunel's shoe buckles. So you might think that's a bit odd for an engineering museum to have, but these shoe buckles explain a bit about his sort of political leanings.
Yeah.
So during the revolution, sort of people were required to kind of donate their silver to the cause, to the government, so they could kind of generate some income for themselves. And Marc Brunel refused to do this, and kind of keeping hold of these kind of shoe buckles are a kind of political statement.
His statement.
So if anyone ever tells you fashion is not political, you need to show them Marc Brunel shoe buckles. And they're beautiful, they're really, really shiny, and I think there's something really fascinating about this man who kind of, builds this tunnel, and it's horrible conditions. It's kind of muddy and it's wet, and it's, the Thames is an open sewer at this point. It's absolutely gross, but he will also retain his beautiful shiny shoe buckles. So yeah, please do have a look at them. Look out for them next time you come and visit.
Lovely. Right, that is brilliant. So question about the tunnels. So it looked like when the first tunnel was built, it looked like there was just one tunnel, but it wasn't. It was a different construction. This is coming from Leslie in the States. And it looks like there was one original tunnel, but that's not the case, is it? Because there was actually one tunnel built, but it was split. Is that right?
Yes.
Because I know from our previous conversation.
Yes, exactly. Thanks, Leslie. So the tunnelling shield, which Marc Brunel patented in 1818, and that's what allowed them to dig the tunnel. So if you imagine it's kind of 12 bodies wide, that's quite wide. And it was sort of 3 people high, so again quite high. So that's building kind of one tunnel. So the miners are digging this one tunnel, and then behind them you've got the bricklayers coming in, and they're both lining the tunnel, but then they're also kind of dividing it into two, so you do get this north and south.
Of course.
And what I think is really interesting about that, it's a classic Victorian engineering, over-engineering. So the tunnel was intended to be for cargo, so horses and carts taking cargo through from one side of the river to the other. It never ended up being used for that. It became a foot tunnel immediately after it opened. It became this kind of underwater shopping arcade, and then in the late 1860s it was sold to the railways. When Marc Brunel was building this in 1825, the railways were really nascent. They were really sort of an emerging technology. So it would have been quite a big leap for him to go, oh yes, my tunnel is going to be used for trains one day. And yet it was big enough when the trains came in to fit these trains, which I just think is amazing. It's just like, if you know anything about Bazalgette and the sewers, he made them much bigger than they were needed for the population at the time, and I think
the foresight.
Exactly, and I think the tunnel is kind of in that mould of making things much bigger than they need to be at that time, and then we sort of benefit 200 years later.
Amazing. Excellent. And last question, which is from Peter in Bristol, understands that fairs and entertainment were held in the tunnel once it was open. What were the conditions like for that to actually happen, considering it was underwater, it was probably drafty, etc. And how limited was it, and how many did they have? How many sort of fairs and entertainment bits did they have going on down there?
So many great questions. So what I love about the sort of story of the tunnel is how it changes and it always sort of becomes something different. So when it opened in 1843, it became this sort of shopping arcade, and if you think that there was this kind of these two tunnels alongside each other, but they were sort of connected by these alcoves in between, and these alcoves were where people would sell anything and everything that had some kind of Thames Tunnel image on. So if you imagine, if you ever go across Westminster Bridge or any sort of London tourist attraction, and you see those stalls nearby covered with Union Jacks, I Heart London, you know, all of that stuff. This is the Victorian equivalent. So you have got you've got things of all different kinds being bought and sold in the tunnel, and Nathaniel Hawthorne, the American author, came to visit the tunnel at one point, and he writes quite scathingly about these poor young women who are, you know, trying to sell things. You know, this is their job, this is their livelihood, and they probably haven't seen sunlight for a long period of time because they're in a tunnel, they're under the Thames. And sort of talks about, you know, these horrid sallow-faced girls, and so it's quite cruel about them. But yeah, it was this kind of interesting kind of, you know, market. But the story of the Thames Tunnel is, as much of anything else, it's a story about money, or not having money, or running out of money, or never having enough money. Which, you know, I'm sure none of us can relate to that. The fancy fairs, as they became known, were another way of them sort of gaining, trying to generate more income, so having people to come and visit. I don't know exactly how many they had. That's a really good question that we should look into. But we know they had a fair few while they were going on. And I love the sort of discussion of the Victorian entertainments that they had. So they had someone called a pantomimic equilibrist, which we think is Victorian for acrobats. Right. It's just someone who could balance and do interesting sort of balancing things. Yes. But pantomimic equilibrist is how it's described in the poster. There was a woman called the Mysterious Lady, which was a sort of, I suppose, a sort of precursor to maybe Mystic Meg or sort of Derren Brown. And you would think of a number and she would guess which number you were thinking of. Right. That was her party trick. It was a simpler time, you know. And at one point, one of the big attractions was electricity, because, you know, the tunnel was lit by gas lamps. Yes. So electricity was a party trick. It was something to sort of, you know, bring Marvel people at. Exactly. So yeah, that hopefully paints a bit of a picture of what it was like, sort of under the Thames in the sort of 1840s, 1850s. It's amazing. Do you know what? It's just, you're talking about the souvenirs and the souvenirs of London, which you see on Westminster Bridge and all the rest of it, and you walk past them, you think, oh, magnets and etc. But it happened back then, and it reminds me very much when the frost fairs used to happen on the Thames further down near Southwark Bridge, where that is now, and down towards Westminster, and the people printing things on the ice at the time for the frost fairs, which were the souvenirs to say, I've been here. Yeah, absolutely. And we've got an amazing story of a stall holder called Mrs. Catlin, who was, you know, she's a woman business owner, which is a great story to be able to tell. And she was a silhouettist, so you could get your silhouette done by Mrs. Catlin. And then she also became a sort of early pioneer photographer as well. Right. She saw the business opportunities that were like, oh, people have kind of, you know, they'll get tired of of silhouettes. They'll want something new. Yes. So really, you know, an amazing kind of cross section of society, kind of in this tunnel. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Listen, can I just say thank you so much for your time, and thank you for bringing it to life. It's phenomenal. It really is. Thanks for hosting us today as well, and looking forward to, you know, to put this all on the video and coming out to you. Really do appreciate it. I hope you have a fantastic year of celebration and everything that goes to keep this place going as well, because keeping the funding going, funny enough, you talk about money, but the funding and keeping the museum going is quite something as well. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's it's a constant thing, you know, and we really want people to be able to experience our history, you know, come and understand the stories, you know, see the collection, visit the building. So thank you so much for helping us celebrate in our 200th year. No, it's lovely. And it's really easy to get to. So Rotherhithe Station, as you come out, you can't miss it because the museum is well and truly signposted. But what I also love is as you go past, it's like trains, as you go past as well, sort of on the walls and all sorts of signage. And you can't miss the place, it's fantastic. So if you're coming into London, and you're definitely coming down to the Rotherhithe area, East London, you've got to come over for this. And also, not only is the Mayflower
next door, you've got the Captain Kidd, which is just over the other side when you were talking about piracy
Yes,
as well.
absolutely.
All just interlinks with this section of London.
I'll give you a little extra
Oh,
piracy thing
Come on.
if you want to hear that. So we've got the beautiful Mayflower, absolutely would recommend it. A little bit further up the river from here, we've also got the Angel, and that also has a lovely sort of riverside terrace, not quite as large as the Mayflower, but there was a judge whose name escapes me, but in the 18th century he used to like to sit apparently and see all of the pirates that he had strung up on the other side of the river, which is pretty morbid, but that's another sort of bit of local Thames history.
But isn't that London history?
That's London history too.
Whenever I do London history, people go, "Cool, wasn't it so gory?"
Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
And thanks everyone for your questions.
So, as you know, we love history, and I really hope you've enjoyed that interview with Katherine over here at the Brunel Museum. So I really, really hope you've enjoyed that, and certainly a place that you need to come and have a look at. If you just consider the first tunnel ever built underwater, and it happened here in London. Well worth that visit. Thanks so much, Katherine. Thanks to everyone for your questions as well. Absolutely superb. And we'll catch you soon on the next video here on the channel.